Again, welcome everyone to the Going Pro Talent Fund fiscal year 2023 info session. This is our last info session this season. You'll realize that I'm talking in seasons now because there are more than one opportunity to apply for the Going Pro Talent Fund in a given year. So that's some great news. But this season we're gonna start just going through this overview. I said in the beginning, if you have any questions, feel free to ask those through chat, or you can interrupt. I don't hold any grudges to anybody that's interrupting me. So we want to answer everybody's questions. I will go through the PowerPoint. I'll get through most of it, I'm sure. We'll open it up to questions. I'm sure there are a lot out there right now. Hopefully I answer some of them in the presentation. All right. And again, I'll introduce myself actually, because I don't know that everybody was here when I did. Rob Dickinson, I am the Regional Director for Business Services for Northwest Michigan Works. I am one of the team of experts. Many of them are on this phone call today that should be connected to you in some way about Going Pro. If you're not connected, we'll get you connected. So don't worry about that. And we'll be the experts for you when you write for this grant. Okay, just an overview of what we're doing. We're going to do, just like I said, an overview of the Going Pro Talent Fund, the performance and recap. So we'll give you some statistics that we as a state have done with this money in the past. And if I have my memory cap on, because that note disappeared, I will let you know tidbits about Northwest Michigan as well when it comes to that. What's new is going to be covered for the 2023. There's a lot of new things going on, including reworking the WeBlooms system. WeBlooms is the online portal in which you will write your grant or type it. And so we'll share a little bit about that as well today. We'll also review the application period and the process for which you start that and go through it. And then obviously questions and answers. All right, so here is the overview. And again, team, if there's anybody chatting me up, let me know and we'll try to get those questions answered. So the overview, the training for the Going Pro Talent Fund has to lead to a recognized credential. So that is part of the 60 by 30 that the governor has put forth. We want 60% of the state to obtain a post-secondary credential. Could be a certificate of completion. It could be a certification in whatever skill from whatever vendor, from whatever training institution. It can be college credit, it can be a degree, it can be a lot of different things, but post-secondary skill upgrading basically is what they want. So 60% of the state needs to have that by 2030. This falls right in the line with that. So Going Pro is designed for employers to come to the table with their new hires and their incumbents to receive either that training or on-the-job training or a go-to-class. We call it the RTI, related technical instruction. It provides individuals with employment, industry recognized credentials and strong wages. I kind of went over that already. Provides assistance to employers for training and developing and retaining current and newly hired employees. So we all know that this works fabulously if you have incumbents, if you have people that are already on your staff that you want to get trained up for either their next promotion or get them trained up so that you guys can go after more jobs because they have more skills. A lot of different things could open up for you. These are the reasons that we want all of our employers to take advantage of this in our area. It also helps ensure that the employers have the talent that they need to compete and grow. All right, so moving right into the performance for the last, I think it's 8 years now, since 2014. So since 2014, and we had 1 year that we did not do it, 2020, during COVID, they took this money and used it for COVID response. So 2020 was a year that we did not receive funding, but every other year we did. Total number of awards across the state, over 5,000. As you can see, the average award amount sits just over $30,000, $553. I will say that Northwest Michigan sat right at the average, the state average for a while. We're a little bit below that now. But I think that is more small companies are taking advantage of this. More companies are taking advantage of it, maybe not for their entire workforce, but they are, just trying it out. And so we see our average award amount a little bit lower than that. That's okay though. Average training cost per person. So funny enough, for the first 7 years, we'll say you could get up to $1,500 training reimbursed, but nobody ever really got that. The state average came down, and right now it's sitting at $1,110. And you'll learn a little bit more about that later in the presentation, but now we're allowed to write up to $2,000 per employee for training. Apprentices even more. Like I said, we'll get to that. The total amount funded so far is $170.84 million. I took a look at the numbers statewide. Back in 2014, I think it was something like 8 million. 8 million was dispersed. For the last couple of years, it's been 40-ish, right around there. And now we got to jump up to 55 million for the entire state. We really have not had a problem across the state spending that money. All the applications, usually it's very competitive toward the end of the application period, where not everybody gets awarded. So in Northern Michigan, there's been an aberration. Last year was our aberration, and we'll get back to our winning ways this year, I'm sure. But we have really kind of, in this area, been able to successfully garner almost every single one of our grants. We were in the high 90% when it came to grant fruition, so or award. Like I said, last year, a little bit of an aberration, got much more competitive, and you'll see our entire team will be responding to that, and we'll be making sure that we're as competitive as anybody else in the state. Total number of employees trained, man, 145,000 people being trained in the last 8 years using this is a great number. We'll just add more to that. Program statistics. Yeah.
Before you move on, there was a question in the chat that you might want to clarify for everyone a little bit. It says, from what I'm hearing Rob say is that apprentices must be a part of the 60 by 30 or a post-secondary credential in order to qualify for going for pro grants. So you might want to just clarify that a little bit.
Okay, so it looks like Chuck, you had that question. Apprentices are just by the nature of their training going to be eligible for this program. So if you are an apprentice, you are getting one of those credentials. And of course, if it is a longer than 1 year, you're not getting that end credential right away, but that is okay. And your business services person will fill in some more details. Pam, I think that's actually you. But hopefully that answers that question. If you are an apprentice, you are eligible for this training. If you are a USDOL.
That does answer my question. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Oh, program statistics here, just showing you guys, everybody on this phone call, that the fewer than 100 employees take up the large portion of the grant awards. You can see that 500 or more, when you have 500 or more, you've garnered 9% of the awards for the first 8 years. But if you had fewer than 100, you're garnering 60% of those. And then 100 to 500, if you add those together, 91% of those are going to traditionally small businesses. So that is just something that I think the state, Leo, is hanging their hat on. Like, this money is going to the small businesses in the area. Okay, so taking a dive into FY21, one of our more recent performances, and the one that we have almost everybody done with. So this is the best numbers that they can come up with, the most up to date as of October, as you can see. 38 million was awarded, over 1,000 applications received, 980 awards, just kind of exemplifying or highlighting the fact that it is a pretty competitive grant. And 9,896 individuals hired and trained. So those new hires that we're able to identify during the process of the application that you're going to hire. And then anybody that's being trained as an incumbent, almost 9,900 of those individuals were going through the program just in fiscal year 21. 13,994 current employees, or I'm sorry, okay, individuals hired and trained. Okay, so the 9,900 are new hires, and then 14,000, that makes more sense, I apologize, are current employees that are being trained. So you're getting a credential for somebody that's already on your staff. And then 1,144 first-year USDOL registered apprenticeships. Thank you to everybody that is taking advantage of not only our team, but those USDOL registered apprenticeships for the job seeker. Those are life-changing opportunities. So thank you for doing that. In FY21, we saw, 1,144 first-year apprentices. That will denote a change in this year. We did delineate first year versus second and third and fourth in the previous years. This year we will not. We'll still want to know that they're a first year apprentice so that we can figure out, how many years they could possibly be on the applications going forward. But in years past, we saw that the first year you would get $3,000 as an incentive to go, put them on the training plan. This year it's going to be $3,500. In previous years, your second year as an apprentice, you could only do the classroom training. So that knocked you down to getting $1,500 after the first year. No longer will that be the case. Every year that your apprentice is on your training plan and they are eligible, they will get $3,500 for that year. So that will reimburse you for the training that is going on, the classes that they're taking. And so it's a much more robust way of garnering more interest for those apprenticeships. Last year, the award, or I'm sorry, FY21's average award amount was almost $40,000. So as more people figure out, ooh, you know what, it doesn't just have to be these apprentices that I'm doing. It could also be the incumbents that I have over here. Let's see, they need this certification. If I have this certification, I can apply for other jobs or other gigs. So everybody's figuring out ways that they can use this. So it's really becoming more dynamic as we go forward.
Question.
Rob, there's a question in the chat from Tom Gallagher. It says, how does an employee become an apprentice and how soon must that happen for this cycle?
This is one of those process guide items, but Tom, if your apprentice is registered, and it's the same as like if they're a new hire apprentice or an incumbent, they just have to be registered at the time that your training is taking place. There is a 30-day window. So say the funding starts or the training window starts in February, right? February 1st. So January, if you pull back 30 days, they could have been hired and started to be registered as an apprentice in January. Then they become, they can qualify for the apprenticeship. And if you are looking for the bigger picture and how they become an apprentice, we have our apprenticeship team on the call as well. And they would love to work with you to develop an apprenticeship, a USDOL registered apprenticeship. And hopefully that answers most of that question. And I feel like, Tom, we would get together with you and just kind of look over the case by case scenario that you might have going. Joe, you have your hand up.
Yeah. So when you're saying 39,000 awarded, how does that, is that awarded to a person in the apprenticeship, or is it awarded to offset the business's expenses? I mean, where's that 39 coming from?
So that average award amount of 39,000 would have been awarded to a company based on their training plan. So your application will say, I want 10 people to go through this training, and this is how much it costs. Up to, for new hires and incumbent workers, up to $2,000 each, they can get reimbursed. And then up to $3,500 for an apprentice, if they're on the application. That money will be, I always put it in quotes, awarded. That money is basically set aside for, in your case, Joe Munson, I believe. Munson will have that pot of money and it'll be sitting at the state until we see that you have finished your training and you show proof of that training. And proof of that training is invoices that you've paid for it, and credentials that you have earned through that training, or grades if it's a college course. And then you show the Michigan Works Data, and we start the process of getting you reimbursed with the state. And basically that would be me telling the state, we're ready for this reimbursement through WeBlooms, the online application system. Please send us that money, and then we will then reimburse you for it once that money comes in. That process is taken anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on how much is going on with them. So bear that in mind. That 6 weeks is a exaggeration on my part. It's only happened a couple of times where we didn't get the money within 2 or 3 weeks. So just so you guys are aware of that. Joe, does that answer your question?
Somewhat. So if we only have one apprenticeship, the max we could get would be the 3,500.
Correct.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So that's a cumulative. The more people you have, the more money you're going to have coming in to offset. Got it.
Correct. Yeah, that up to
Okay.
2,000 is per person. Up to 3,500 is per apprentice.
Okay. Perfect.
No. Okay, so the budget here.
I'm sorry to interrupt you again. There was another question in the chat. It's from Grace. Hi, Grace.
Hi.
From Precision Plumbing. How does that work for the apprenticeship DOL program? Does the state hold on to the money? Is it still a reimbursement for the $3,500? So does, I guess, are you asking that the, at what point does the $3,500 get dispersed?
Yes, for the apprenticeship if it's a DOL program.
Yeah, so no matter what kind of program it is, whether it's the apprenticeship program or some other training vendor such as MMTC, there would be, the reimbursement would follow the proof of payment, the proof of training. So whenever you get that credential or the OJT has been done. So for a registered apprentice, usually on the application, they're taking one class. It could be more than that, but one class during the year so that we can get a credential. So if they're taking, or their grades from the classes that they're taking, once they get those and you send them to us, that's when that process starts for reimbursement. Does that make sense, Grace?
So I guess you just say we send the grades in. It's not like an actual invoice.
Well, it could, well, technically it will be both. So the invoice show proof of payment that you paid for the class, and then also a credential on top of that.
What is the proof of the on-the-job training? Because isn't that just their wages?
Yes.
What do you need
So
for that?
for proof of on-the-job training, and this goes for new hires if they're apprentices or not, proof of on-the-job training will be a payroll screenshot. And there's 3 items that we would need to see. So this could be multiple screenshots that you would send to us for proof. It would be their hire date. It would be their current, or I'm sorry, their starting wage. And then, oh no, I'm going to forget the last one. It's not coming to me, but there are 3 things that would go on there. Easy one, their name. So it just has to tie it in together. So their name has to be on there, their hire date, and then their starting wage. And that would be the proof of them being hired for OJT. Okay. So this slide is just going to show you the budgets that I've already talked about. So we can move on there. Let me get there we go. All right, so moving to the highlights for this upcoming application year. Some key priorities that the state has taken into consideration are streamlining the application, scoring transparency, which is a really cool addition that we really like. I personally think that it's going to help us with making our applications even more competitive. Increased participant funding, so from 1,500 to 2,000, and then from 3,000 to 3,500, and that 3,500 follows the apprentice through their entire program. If it's 1 year, obviously you're getting the 3,500, but if it's a 4-year program, you're getting 3,500 every year. Very important to distinguish that. Funding cap of 500,000. I don't believe in the history of Northwest Michigan that we've had one quite that large. We might have come close, but they are capping so that the large businesses aren't taking, hundreds of thousands of dollars away from the small businesses. They're going to cap it at 500,000. Nobody will get an award more than that. The US DOL registered apprenticeship expansion, we've kind of talked about that already. The price or the reimbursement rate goes up. Multiple application and award cycles, we'll talk about those. Modification allowances. So there was 2 levels of modifications that were being done. Some of them we could do locally. Some of them we had to turn into the state, to Leo, to see if they would allow that modification. Much more of that's going to be in our hands. So that might be Dylan or Pam or Kyle, your business services representative, Rob Best, myself, asking you a little bit more questions, a little bit more detailed questions so that we know that we can do that modification, that it will be allowed. And then monitoring and performance. Monitoring for us in the past, just to let you behind the curtain a little bit, was that they would pull 5 random applications that we have, went through the whole cycle with, and they would look at it. And did we get all the things that we needed to get? The backup documentation is very important at that point. Now they will do, because there's multiple cycles, they're going to be doing it more, and they'll take a percentage of how many applications that we get. And so they'll be doing those monitorings all year round at this point. So very important when we ask for backup documentation that we have that open communication and we're able to get that from you guys, from the employers. Just a little bit about the streamlined application. They're going to exclude the participant level training plan data. So employer identification information is streamlined. Projected training plans without specific dates. They're going to ask that we have a range of dates that we can put on the training plan instead of what each individual training is going to be at. Funding amount requested. So we'll have one area where we're going to ask for the whole amount instead of asking for multiple times there. A number of workers proposed to be trained. So new and current, instead of getting that information from you and getting basically just a laundry list of people that are on your staff that you're sending to training, we're no longer going to ask for those individual names. We're just going to do the aggregate, and we're going to ask for how many new hires, how many current employees, and we're going to ask the question if they're apprenticeships or it's a non-apprenticeship. But just so you know that's going to make it a lot easier. Some companies would have hundreds of individuals in their training plan, and that just made for, as business happens, that just made for a headache for whoever was trying to watch. Did all 100 and 150 of those people go through that training, and then match up the credentials to that? So that's gonna be a little bit easier in the application process. One of the things that if you were at one of our meetings, you would have heard an elation, a large, loud cheer, as they said that they have eliminated the rationale, even though that is a part of the application where we were able to tell the story and maybe pull on those heartstrings. Even though this is business, you still were trying to pull on those heartstrings to get them to score you higher. the state has told us repeatedly that everybody was scoring really high on those rationales. So it wasn't distinguishing us from anybody else. So if that was the case, let's get rid of it. And so that was the feedback they got from across the state, MWAs, employers, training vendors. They all said the same thing. So out it went. The employer contribution, projected wages, travel, new equipment, productivity, those kinds of things, they did eliminate the in-kind and partner contributions from our side of the application. So we're no longer going to be able to put our money toward it. But with the new scoring criteria, it's not really going to matter. So, and we'll get to the scoring criteria in a little bit. Application and outcome data will be collected and reported in WeBlooms by aggregate. So it's not going to be any individual names anymore. A bit about the scoring transparency. FY 21 and 22 applications scored consistently high in the rationales, as I was saying. The employer and MW feedback noted redundancy in collecting the rationale. Just like I just said, moving towards a more transparent scoring process for 23 with focuses only on objective categories. So the rationale being that one really obvious subjective category is out, obviously, but there are a couple other ones that were taken away as well. WeBlooms will display an applicant's score for the employer and MWA users prior to submission. So as you finish up your application, it's gonna, at the end, it's gonna say review and submit. So you're gonna be in that section, you're gonna be reviewing all the information, making sure you got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed and the correct information is in there. Making sure that there's 2 key contacts for your company, just in case. We know that this is not the case for most of you, but just in case somebody leaves, gets promoted, retires, that we have a backup person that knows about the application. We've run into many times where that has happened across the state. So we're going to be able to be in that review and submit section, and you're going to go all the way to the bottom. You're going to very clearly see the score that you got in each category. And if it's really a 0 or whatever the top point is. I think there's 5, 6, and 7 are available in different categories. So it'll be very plain where your application has not scored points. So before pushing that submit button, we'll have a conversation. This is just my ideal situation. You and the BSR or whoever is working with you on the application looks at that score and says, okay, in this category, we didn't get any points. How can we get points in that section? If you can't, you simply can't, right? Like that's the way it's going to be. But if there's an obvious way to get you points, our team is going to work with you on that. Participant funding and cap, increase per person cap. We talked about this already. The 1,500 up now up to 2,000, 3,000 up to 3,500, and then that cap of 500,000 is not going to be awarded to an individual site, or up to 500,000 is the only amount that you'll be able to get there.
Rob, I've got a question in chat from Tom again. He's wondering if the seasonal employees clause, most of his employees average over 1,000 hours a year, and do overtime hours count towards that total of 1,664 hours that are required from the application?
That is a question that I have heard recently, and I'm getting clarification on that. The way that our process guide, Tom, reads is that they have to be full-time. Seasonal and part-time workers do not qualify. So my question to them is, even if the hours are there, are you still saying no to that? So I'll have to get back to Tom and this entire group on that. I'm sure that, Tom, you're not the only one with that question. So we are going to get clarification. We actually have a phone call tomorrow with them, with the state on this. So that can be one that we can ask during that time. Dylan, were there any more questions before I move on? I saw your head shake, so I'm going to.
Sorry, in the chat, no.
Okay.
Oh, there's just a note there. That's nope.
Okay. So just talking about apprenticeship expansion, the priority to support USDOL registered apprenticeships is something that has been within the program for a while. This year, it's going to be really obvious priority. You see that with the raise in the reimbursement per award or per person on the award. So expanded beyond the first year through completion, you can get that 3,500 each year, regardless of where they're at in the program. So if they are a third year in a 4-year program, you can put them on this application, identify them as an apprentice, and they get that 3,500. They will get that 3,500 if they have a 1-year apprenticeship program, and they are doing that training during the year. For employers pursuing a USDOL registered apprenticeship program, careful consideration must be made to ensure the sponsorship and/or registration dates comply with LEO's policy. So this I did a little bit more research on because it was confusing the way they worded it to me. Really what they want is make sure that this person is doing their training within the training dates that we identify. So this year, the awards, we're 99% sure that the training will start February 1st. That window when you can start training is February 1st. If they start training before that, that training is not eligible. So we want to make sure that the training that happens in the correct year. And I don't know if I just said something outrageous because there's a lot of chats all of a sudden.
No, Evelyn just asked everyone to post their name and their company in the chat so we can follow up later.
All right, well, that's good. The verification process is a little bit different. No longer will you be required to submit the USDOL form 671, which nobody really knows, and the participant demographic form. So previously we had to have employers submit a RAPIDS documentation that would prove that this is a registered apprenticeship or apprentice, and then a participant demographic form. We will no longer be submitting those. What we will be doing, because documentation that must be provided during monitoring and prior to reimbursement, are these two lovely things. The MWA will provide the employer's name and the name of each USDOL registered apprenticeship or apprentice via the USDOL registered apprentice validation form. So that validation form is a form that we have that when you have apprentices, we won't need to know their names right away, but in order to verify that they are an apprentice before reimbursement happens, we're going to ask you for their name and the name of the apprentice and a couple, maybe 1 or 2 things more, so that we can then send that information to Leo, who will reply back with, yes, everybody's valid on this list. So no longer are you going to have to provide that, or if you're working with Evelyn, her team had to provide that. What we will do is just simply ask the name and 1 or 2 more things. We will send those things in before you get reimbursed, and they will be validated by the state. A little bit more streamlined there. Documentation that may be obtained during fact finding. So fact finding for us is just us coming to you, learning about what you need, what your wants, needs, and desires are. And we can get a signed letter of commitment from you, attesting that you have an active USDOL registered apprenticeship program, including the potential trainee occupations. So the reason they put this one, the reason we put this in here is because there have been just a couple instances in the past where you as an employer have a registered apprenticeship program, but it's not a USDOL registered apprenticeship program. So we want to make sure that before we go through the process and put you down on the training plan and get you an award, that these apprenticeship programs are indeed USDOL registered. And there's confusing difference. I know Pam, you had went through this, but there are state level apprenticeship programs. The the Going Pro Talent Fund is designed to work with the USDOL registered apprenticeship program. So that's the national credential that an apprentice will receive when they complete. We won't be able to reimburse for the, one that we ran into this year was a state apprenticeship program. So just know that little fact there. And if you are looking for any help with apprenticeships, again, our apprenticeship team is there to serve. All right, I was speaking about multiple award cycles here. Okay, so we're getting ready for November 21st will be our first application period. So all businesses that are applying for cycle 1 for the independent application will have to start November 21st, work with your BSR, get your ducks in a row before we even come out of the picture onto the floor with you. Pick our brains for ideas. All of this is valid, but November 21st, the application window will open. December 12th, and I will repeat that, December 12th is the drop dead date. That is it. I can't turn anything in after that date. There are no exceptions. Somehow I feel like some people were given exceptions because they've made such a big deal about there will be no exceptions. So we have to get you to submit your application by December 12th. And dates subject to change down the bottom right-hand corner. You can see that, that February 1st training period is tentative. I think November 21st is pretty locked in stone, but I've been surprised before. So November 21st to start the application period, you must be done with it by the 12th. Then we have a chance at the MWA to go through it. If there's any glaring things, we might send it back for rework. But as long as you have sent it to us by the 12th of December, you'll be okay. So even if there is a change that we need to make before we turn around and turn it into the state, and believe me, we catch little, not very obvious things all the time. So we'll have your back on that. The training period would start February 1st, which means the awards would be made sometime. You'll be aware of them in January sometime. And so that's cycle 1. Cycle 2, we don't have very specific dates yet, but late spring. And I have to move this lovely box of everybody here, so I apologize. There we go. Late spring of 2023, that training period would start in July. So we're thinking March, April, actually, April-ish, April or May would be the application period. So that training could start in July and June. And then there's this often talked about, but not regularly done, industry-led collaborative. So that industry-led collaborative application period starts in March of 2023, and the training period is going to be whatever is allowed or awarded during that application. So you're going to come up with that. And it's a 12-month training period. So you'll have a year to finish it if you get awarded that. And I think there's more on an industry-led collaborative later in this presentation. So.
Hey, Rob, there's a question in the chat. It's from Jennifer. Is there a preference given to those whose applications are submitted first, or is it anyone within the window will be considered? From what I know, I think it's everyone that's in the same cycle is going to be considered equally.
Yes, you are correct, Dylan. Everybody within that cycle will be considered equal. They'll all be scored. Those scores will come out, and then whatever the scoring criteria is, they will start awarding those highest point earners, and then down the point total. There is a high probability of ties when the money is almost spent. There are, for those individuals, those employers that are on the bubble, there are tiebreaker points. And I think that they're going to be in this presentation. And if they're not, I can speak to them. But everybody will be considered at the same time. Everybody gets scored. It's not a first come, first serve.
Similar
Hey, Rob.
question from Aaron. No, I apologize. I'm sorry. Just another question.
I was just going to ask a quick question before you asked Aaron's question that goes back to the dates from the previous slide. I've gotten a couple questions personally from employers wondering if they can send in an authorization request early to get ready for the 21st. Are they allowed to, or no? Do they have to wait till the 21st to send in an authorization request?
So that's a really, actually a great question. We have been told the last direction that I have on that is that we have to wait till the 21st. That anybody that has already sent in that authorization, I am to deny them. The reason is that they're building that Weebly system or amending that system right now. And they're worried that if we've pre-done the authorization, that somehow something will get messed up. So November 21st is that date that we will do that authorization. And for everybody on this phone call, on November 21st and the days after that, I am glued to my computer and will authorize them as soon as I possibly can. And so you'll be able to have the most amount of time to work on the application when it comes to that. If you want to get ready before that, each one of your BSRs has been working with this application in the previous years. So we might be able to provide you with previous years. Like I said, it has changed a fair amount. But right now that authorization request is best. It's best to wait till the 21st. Hopefully we get more direction on that tomorrow. It's a question that I've asked and I haven't gotten an answer to yet. So did that help, Pam?
It does, thank you. And the deadline on December 12th, that is at noon on the 12th. For those people who are kind of coming in at the very end, it has to be noon that day.
Eastern Standard, yeah.
Okay, thank
Um,
you.
Yeah, and I would plan on a few minutes earlier. I tell this story all the time. I won't tell the employer, but we finally connected on the day, the end day. But we still got an application in, and it was like it was 5 o'clock deadline, and it was like 4:58. And they were giving me a hard time because their clock said 5:01. So just know that you want to do it before noon, so that we don't run into that kind of thing again. Dylan, you had a question from the chat?
Yeah, another one from the chat, Aaron. Question is there funds allocated for both cycles, or if funds are used, cycle 2 may not have enough funds? That's kind of how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so they are coming up with that right now, because this is the first year for both cycles. They didn't want to come out and say, this is the amount that we're going to do for this cycle and then for this cycle. They wanted to kind of see what was going on and see where their directors were kind of going with that thought process. So we don't have that number yet. But once we do, as the BSRs are working with each individual company to write these grants, we'll definitely let everybody know. Sorry, Aaron, we don't have it yet. Anything else in the chat? Okay, so the multiple award cycles, important to note that it's a 12-month training cycle where training must be completed within that 1 year. There's no extensions. There was a possibility of extensions for previous years. Those extensions would mean that you would forego the next year application-wise. Now that there will be no extensions approved. Must complete the training by January 31st of 2024 to apply for that cycle 1. Cycle 2 awardees that complete training by June 30th of 2024 may apply again for that cycle 2 training. So you get a year to finish it out. And that does include, if it doesn't say it on here, that does include the 90-day retention for your new hires. So the 90-day, so after they're on the job training or classroom or the combination of both, after all that training is done, they need to be retained for 90 days to get the full reimbursement. And I think it's a 30, 60, 90 tiered. You'll get partial reimbursement up to the full reimbursement in 90 days. There will be no queue. They're coming out straight away saying it this year instead of everybody holding our breath. There will be no queue for unfunded 2023 applications. So if you don't get funded for whatever reason, there will not be a waiting list this year. There will, however, be cycle 2 that you could apply for. We'll take a look at the application. If we can improve it, we will. If we can't improve it, if that's the best that we're gonna, the points, that's the most amount of points we're gonna get because that's the training you're doing, then we can still, I would still submit it. You never know. Maybe the point totals come down. Maybe the highest isn't, quite so high this time. So we would encourage you to do that. May have no more than one independent award. So you can't do cycle 1 and 2, but you can do 1 independent and 1 ILC, be part of that industry-led collaborative. And employers may apply for cycle 2. I've already said this one. If not awarded, a cycle 1 independent application. Okay, so industry-led collaboratives. So I told you I would get to it. Here it is. Separate application and scoring criteria than the independent. So we will have that. I'm sure they're working out the bugs on that one, but we will have that before the application period, obviously in March. They will set aside funds. Amount it's going to be based on overall funding availability. The vague answers again here, I apologize, but that's where we're at right this second. Open application period until set aside funds are exhausted. So for FY22, we were still able to submit industry-led collaboratives up until, I don't know, 3 months ago, maybe now, maybe a little bit further back than that, but we were able to do that because they had set aside some money and, the industry-led collaboratives were not taking a lot of that money. So they lasted a lot longer. Just like it said on the previous slide, beginning in March 2023, you can apply for that. So a little bit more on the industry-led collaborative. 1 ILC per employer based on the employer location. Employer may have an independent and an ILC. Employer partners may be from across the state. So you don't have to stay very local. You don't have to stay local for this. You can partner up with somebody that's in a different part of our state. Classroom training only. There are no new hires allowed for this, with the exception for employers holding the OJT for the USDOL registered apprenticeship. Training shared by at least 2 partners. So the industry-led collaboratives, just like the name kind of denotes, and like the first bullet says, 2 or more partners, and they have to have similar training, if not the exact same training, to go through. And the reason that you're doing this in the past, for instance, if a training vendor needs 8 people to run a class, but you only have 4, you can team up with another person, another employer that has 4 people that they want to train. And something that you guys could not have done separately because you didn't have the numbers, you can now do together. And you can write a industry-led collaborative grant for that. Like it says, if different providers, strong rationale of common training need, purpose of training standards, common curriculum, and shared objectives and competencies must be explained. So we'll take that. You're not going to put that into WeBlooms. You're going to write that to us. We're just going to make the case that even though these are different providers, their training is very similar and the same outcome will be there for both providers that are going to be doing the training. And then that collaborative intent explained in the statement of collaboration section of the application. So there's going to be a statement of collaboration section that just shows we want evidence that this is very collaborative and why you're doing it together. That's the easiest example that I've come up with, but there are probably more out there that the training provider could not do it unless we had the numbers. So we're teaming up. So that'd be one that you could do there. Application process and eligibility. All right. Excuse me for my drink there. So we're vetting through the state of Michigan Department of Treasury after submission. So everybody that's applying must have all of their taxes and all be in good standing with the Treasury, which means if the MWA is notified that you have an obligation, that you have 60 days to resolve it, and to work directly with the Treasury on that. So we will not be able to step in and be your liaison to that. We will know through this process that you have an obligation that you have to take care of. And then we will have you talk to the Treasury. And then once you get the okay from the Treasury, we will then tell Leo, hey, they are in good standing now. That's when Leo will say, okay, we looked them up, they're good. So just so you know that, everybody has to be in good standing. And if there's some obligation out there, we'll tell you right away so that you have the time to clear it up. In the past, this has literally been something that's been cleared up in 1 or 2 days. We've had some companies not clear it up. So it just depends on what it is and how fast you're able to clean that up. Like I said, they'll provide the verification of good standing and then they'll award that amount. So in practice, what you're going to see is, 40 people from Northwest Michigan are awarded. 2 of them have these obligations that they have to take care of. So that money is going to be held for you for those 60 days. So while you clean that up, then the award letter will be sent to you. If not, that money goes back into the pool and then the next people on that list will be awarded. All employer communication should be driven to the MWA. So this is not something that we'll send you to Leo to figure out. This is something that you will you'll talk to us and then directly to the Treasury to we'll keep Leo out of this. Bit about eligible employers. So non-government private entities, so for-profit or nonprofit, compliant with all state tax obligations, like I just discussed. Not eligible to apply are federally recognized governments. The Native American tribes are included in this, including the casinos, federal, state, and local governments, public institutions and entities, local or intermediate school districts, municipally owned utilities, road commissions, county road commissions, and community mental health authorities. Unions are also not eligible, but they could be training providers. So if you fall in one of these categories, or if you have questions on that, just get with your BSR and whatever we need to do to make the best case for you, we will. The eligible trainees, so current employees, individuals on the employer's payroll at the time of application or hired at least 31 days prior to the award date. So I spoke about the 30 days prior, so it's 31 days prior to the award date. For new employees or new hires, individuals that are hired 30 days prior to, on, or after the effective award date. So if it is February 1st, going back to the January there, you could be considered a new hire. And that means that you could get, in addition to that classroom training, you could be trained on the job as well. You must be hired, trained, and retained for 90 days. The 90-day retention begins upon completion of training and must be completed within 1 year of the effective date of the award in order to receive full reimbursement. So that was that bit about, the 30, 60, 90. If you complete the 90 within a year, then you get full reimbursement. If you don't, then you would get possibly partial reimbursement. And then also, of course, if that person moves on to another opportunity, and they work there for 30 days, you would get that partial reimbursement for the 30 days. Because we do want to recognize that you were training them, and we want to reimburse you for time and effort. So the eligible training topics. So current and new employees can go through that CRT, that classroom training. New employee on the job training is going to be for those new employees. In the USDO registered apprenticeship classroom training, it could be a new apprentice or an incumbent apprentice as well. in the OJT training for their first year completion, even if they are a current employee, but this is they're entering into that OJT, we would consider them a first year. So they would be eligible if they were a current going into that apprenticeship program, or if you're hiring a new employee that is going into that. So those are the eligible training topics. Examples, US DOL registered apprenticeship 100% OJT is allowable for the following, like that related technical instruction has been paid for by another source, so we're not reimbursing that. So that OJT would be, we would pay up to the 3,500. And usually apprenticeships on the job training is way more expensive than that. So you would get that 3,500, or the RTI occurred prior to the effective award date. So sometimes apprenticeships have all of their classroom training up front. And if that was done, but you have OJT stuff left to do, that would be another exception to that. The classroom training component has already been completed. So like I said, the front loaded. Training must lead to a credential. We've heard this one. Certificate of completion, certification, college credit, license, or other. We always leave room for something else that pops up because things pop up that we would deem eligible for this. The introductory or overview training is subject to denial or non-reimbursement. This is when the BSR is going to come to you and ask you those questions about, okay, is this training something that you're doing as regular business? Because if it is, if something that all your employees go through, it's not going to be something that's going to be reimbursable. If all of your employees go through it, it's just the cost of doing business. But if it's above and beyond, or if it's more than the introductory level of, and one of the examples that we give sometimes here is OSHA, like the very basic bottom tier OSHA training is not eligible. But once you get into that 10-hour, or I think it may be more than 10-hour. Once you get into the more hours, 30 hours, I'm looking at my team like they can
Yeah,
tell me.
OSHA 30.
Yeah,
Oh,
OSHA
I
30.
think OSHA 10 is even allowed to.
Okay, all right, good.
I'm
Okay.
gonna double check. Yes, OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 are allowed.
Okay, so that example is a good one. That the OSHA introductory below, OSHA 10, not something that we'll be reimbursing for, but OSHA 10, OSHA 30, some of those, it just can't be lockout, tag out, those really things that are like doing business. But the BSRs will either have that knowledge in the back of their head, or they'll ask me, or if I don't even know, that might be something that we go to Leo with, like, hey, what do you guys think of this? So just know that the introductory or overview training is usually not something that we're going to do. If it's part of your apprenticeship program, it's a part of your apprenticeship program, and that would be okay. Online training must be live and instructor-led versus recorded learning at a trainee's own pace. So a couple of things come up here, and I've seen it in healthcare. I've seen it in, actually, I've seen it in construction. I've seen it in a couple of different industries. So if you have training, a subscription-based training, and it's all at your own pace, and there's no instructors, that will not be allowed. That is not allowed for this training. If online training if it can be live and instructor-led, then you have, and you can obviously prove that, then that's eligible. But the recorded training at your own pace is not something that's eligible. And if there are any questions on that, of course, our BSRs will take a look at that, and we'll make the best decision that we can with that. A quality instructor-led hybrid course that is both modularized, I can't even say that, modularized and live is allowable. So if there's a hybrid situation going on, that would be a new exception to that rule. If it is some modules at your own pace over here, and then some instructor-led over here, then we can make our case pretty easily.
Quick question, dude.
Yeah, go ahead.
What about if it's OEM training on a specific piece of equipment or something that, you know, we feel that that apprentice or trainee would fit into, is that
Okay.
something eligible?
So that would depend. So is that a credential thing that the vendor would come on site later to train somebody for?
A lot of times we would send them to the manufacturer to get
Okay.
the certificate of training, and that's the only way that that person can work on it.
Yeah, so just hearing that little bit, I believe that would work. Is really what we're the bottom line is we want them to have a credential and that you're paying for that credential, right? Like it's above and beyond. It's not the cost of doing business. It's not your staff doing the training. So does that answer the question?
Thanks.
Okay. New this year, and I'm sure there'll be questions around this, far into the future, but we are happy to report that human resource training for a US DOL registered apprenticeship is allowable. HR training outside of a US DOL apprenticeship is not. So all training in line with the apprenticeship standards, as long as it's in the apprenticeship, human resources training is eligible. We've been fighting that fight for a very long time. Since the very beginning of the program in 2014, we noticed that human resources was not on that list. And we've went to bat every single year. We're not the only ones, but the program human resources has just been one of those, those rubbing little things over in the corner that some people would rather not deal with, and we won't let it go away. So right now, human resources training is allowable if it's connected to an apprenticeship program. If it is not, unfortunately, at this time, we cannot do it. I just want to be very clear on that because I know that there will be questions about that. Okay, modifications, monitoring, and performance. So modifications that maintain the original or improved scoring and integrity of the award are allowed. And we'll be able to tell you that. Funds that must be rescinded for changes that fall outside of the modification allowances. So in our process guide, we know exactly what can be modified. Some of the examples would be, if your vendor canceled the training, but you're picking up another training that is very similar, we can modify your application because that won't change the scoring or the integrity of it. If the training dates have went and there's no training, we can change those dates. We just need to know before you guys make that change so that we can get it into the system. So it's not, so it's above board and everybody knows about it. So those are a couple examples of how we can modify without changing the integrity of the application. And most of those will be approved at our level. I'm sure there's a couple things that we're gonna ask the state about, but those situations are a case-by-case basis, depending on your training plan and your needs when it comes time for that training, or if it's past the time for the training and we still haven't done it. That's the bit about the constant communication, that the BSR needs to be the best friend of whoever is on that team, on your team that is in charge of that grant. We just need that open communication so that once changes start happening, we are ahead of the game and we can see very clearly that we need to do that modification. Just like I said, course date changes within the original approved 12-month period. So if you need to change it outside that, it will not be something that we can do. It has to be within that same year. Course changes equivalent to the originally approved training or a different training provider offering the same, spoke about that. And then cannot replace a course that would negatively impact the original scoring. And the example that they give here is removing a course impacting the proportion of trainees receiving college credit. So you will notice on the scoring criteria that you will have a chance to grab points if a certain percentage of your trainees are receiving college credit. If that proportion changes in this example, because we didn't send somebody to the class or they didn't go to that class for whatever reason, that's going to negatively impact and we can't replace that. that course. So guidance and resources. If you haven't been told already, nwm.org/goingpro is where we're going to put all of the final versions of these documents that you will need, including, and Pam asked for this previously, including well, one, the scoring criteria, the employer guide, which is very similar to the one that we work off of. So you'll know almost everything that we do. And the walkthroughs for WeBlooms. They're not on there yet. They're still constructing, just a week away. They're still constructing, and they're going to get that to us as soon as they possibly can, which will basically give you screenshots of, blow by blow of what you do. But that being said, you have us. Another resource that I didn't put on here is your BSR, myself. I know, and I spoke to Betsy Williams at MMTC is a great resource as well, especially if you're getting training from MMTC. She knows all about this program, and the things that she doesn't know about, she's got full access to us. So she can get you those answers as well. And I know she's a willing participant in that. So if there is anything that you need, we're willing to sit down and we won't really hold your hand, but we'll handhold through the process. We can be in person, we can be over virtual, over Zoom like this. It could be a phone call. You can ask us through email. You can do any of that thing. We are your resource for this grant. Talent Fund communication. If there's anybody on this call that was part of those focus groups earlier this year, thank you for that. It came to fruition. We've got some great new parts of the program, parts of the grant that came out of that. So thank you again for that. And they kind of list that it's more clear, concise communication, the clarity about the application period. Even though the subject to change of the dates is still out there, we believe we're really kind of at the point where we can say November 21st, December 12th, February 1st will be the first date that you're able to train. So updates to WeBlooms that make it easier for employers to know their score before submitting. Like I said, we've been in the testing phase of this, and we've seen those. I've seen the scores. My really quick score, I got a really bad score. I only got 13 out of whatever it was. But I could very clearly see where I needed to, where I could get more points. So it's a very useful tool. So this is just a bit about, they're going to send a press release announcing the opening of the application period. So you might see a state level, press release. We'll probably follow that up in our area. We're going to promote the Talent Fund on the Michigan Talent social media channels. So if you like the state or the Pure Michigan Talent Connect on social media, you'll be getting those. You'll be getting probably inundated with those. We're going to promote to employers through our employer-focused newsletters. So the state has their employer-focused ones. We have ours, so we'll get that out there, and we'll send out a press release announcing the award recipients. So you'll know. There might be an embargo on that information. They're going to give us, I don't know, hours maybe that we can let you know before that press release goes out that you're awarded. That has changed every year that I've been a part of this program. It was days, then it was, you have 2 hours, and then you have no time because we got to go. So we'll be trying to get to you on a personal note when you're awarded. And then even if you're not awarded, we'll reach out as well, letting you know your options. We do have more options now. We know that there's no waiting in a queue for monies to come back, but there is cycle 2. And then there are the industry-led collaborative options as well. And then we could really kind of sit down with the objectivity of the scoring criteria and look where we didn't get any points and see if those are options for us in the future as well. So excited for all these changes here. All right, we've kind of done questions and answers throughout. And then there's our contact information. I didn't put our phone numbers on there. I just put the emails, because then it got really small. I didn't want to do that to anybody. It's already really small. I can barely read it myself. But this PowerPoint can be distributed as well to anybody that's here, as well as this recording. So that's our team. It is noted on here that this is just the business services team. Our apprenticeship team that sits right next to us is not on there, but they will also be working with employers like yourselves to help go through the process. So Evelyn Split, the Regional Director of Apprenticeships, is working with her team. Tina Holden, Marie, I forgot your last name for a second, and then Jane Breederlin are also contacts that you can reach out to. Any questions? I see the chat, but I don't know if there's questions in there.
Yeah, there is a chat. There is a chat question. It's from Grace. She's asking what a good score would be. From what I remember from the guide, perfect score is 33 points. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's a lot of different factors on how points are awarded. A lot of different categories. I don't know if you wanted to go into detail about that, Rob.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do this from memory real quick. So yeah, the perfect score, I believe Dylan is right, is 33 out of 33. The scoring criteria document is up on our page where you can see very clearly what you would get for each one of those. I think there's 6, maybe 7 categories.
I've got it pulled up right here, Rob, if you want me to just say it real quick.
Yeah.
So on the application, the scoring criteria, first category is high priority industry sector. To earn points in this, the employer must be in agribusiness, construction, education, energy, healthcare, information technology, hospitality, or outdoor recreation, or manufacturing mobility. And this is a 7-point category. Second category.
Before you go on, Dylan, that is something that we'll work with each employer on. We'll see if you fit in one of those categories, because if you fit in one of those categories, that's an easy amount of points. If you don't fit in one of those categories, you do have all these other options that Dylan's going to outline. So we'll be trying to recoup those points, but just so you know.
Yep, and for our Traverse City participants, the map, we have to kind of to gauge where you're at on the map. It's all over the place, but Rob and I were working together diligently on trying to fit people into those spaces. So, so that would be in this DEI. Sorry, my apologies. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. To earn points in this category, it's a 6-point category. The employer must respond yes to be inclusive in the DEI category, and they must attest that the business is at least 51% owned and controlled, and day-to-day operations and long-term decisions are managed by said category, or is a geographically disadvantaged business, which is what I was talking about. It includes distressed communities, and so there are certain areas of the state that are included in that. I apologize. 1 second. I have the document pulled up, but it's not moving for me. Here we go. The next category is a USDOL registered apprenticeship, and that gets you 7 points. 3 points, minimum of 1 apprentice. Earn 5 points. That at least 25% and no more than 50% of all trainees on the training plan are apprentices. Basically, that category is for USDOL registered apprenticeships. The college credit training. That can earn you 5 points. To earn 3 points in that category, a minimum of 1 and up to 30% of all trainees will receive a college credit. To earn 5 points, greater than 30% of all trainees will receive a college credit. And then possible points are only between 0, 3, or 5. You can't earn any in between there. And then average wages, that can get you 8 points. To earn points in this category, the average hourly wage must be equal to or above regional median wage. And that's calculated by dividing the sum of all trainees' hourly wages by the total number of trainees. And that wage is different for every region. So that's it for the.
Okay. So in addition to that, there are going to be further categories on that scoring criteria that will break some ties. So the 33 points is the main, but when we get down to it, when there's a large amount of people, so the way that I was explaining this before was, say 28 points was the highest that people got. There's a big chunk of people that got that. So that money is allocated to them. And then the next level is 20 points. And that money is allocated to them. And then the next level is 14 points. And now that level, there's too many employers in that level. We don't have enough money for them. So that's when we go to these other scoring criteria, tiebreakers, basically. And that's all explained in the process guide and the scoring criteria. Hopefully, Grace, that answered. I think that was Grace that asked that question. No. Any other questions in the chat or from the group as a whole?
Oh, there's another one from Tom Gallagher in the chat. Is there any chance that being located in a geographically disadvantaged area would allow for a reduction in annual hours?
I don't know the answer to that. My knee jerk, Tom, is no. But that is another question that we can ask Leo. Yeah, I've not, like I said, I haven't read anything on that that would point me in that direction, but totally willing to ask that question.
If I could, this is Tom Gallagher. Would overtime hours count toward those annual hours? Is it more of an annual formula versus a weekly formula?
That is the question that I am asking the state right now that I don't have definitive answer for you, Tom. I'm wondering if it's total hours, which would include in my mind the overtime hours that would get us to a full-time, like be full-time, or if it's simply if they are working the 32 plus per week. The way the process guide is written, it is seasonal and part-time do not count, that they would not be eligible. But the wording in there in previous years had led me to believe, so I am asking the question, the follow-up question to them.
Okay, because 32 hours is easy, but if it's 32 hours times 52 weeks, it's difficult. And I got to believe that most people in the construction business, in my nature of business, where it's excavating services, wintertime does produce a slowdown or shutdown.
Right.
We would all be ineligible, and yet we still need training.
Correct. Yeah, and that's one of the other reasons. And as we get together as MWAs and we discuss these points too, that's something that has come up on those phone calls where you say that this is a priority. Construction is right there. It's a priority. You give extra points to that industry, yet here we are, we're sitting and most of my employees are ineligible because of this part-time seasonal exclusion. So I will continue to ask that question and I will get back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Rob.
Dylan, we have anything else in the chat?
Sorry, I was just going through the process guide. Grace had a question. Where can we find our area's regional median wage? And there is a document included on the website, I believe, Rob?
I don't know if it's on the website. I can get that information to everybody. For our region, I know that it's I can't remember the exact.
Well, if I can say it, it's $17.88 for the Grand Traverse region.
Okay, and we can get the document. Yeah, that's right, $17.88. We can get the document that shows you how they're coming up with that or where they got that data. That is built into the application period. So if your average wage is below that, you're not going to get those points on the scoring criteria list. If it is above that, obviously you will. But it's $17.88. I think I can confirm that with Dylan.
It does
Oh, sorry, Kyle.
I was just gonna mention that when you're filling out your application, it will give you, at least from the testing I've done, it does tell you the regional median wage for your region at the end. So if you wanted to adjust your application to get some higher waged employees on there to kind of bring the average up, you could. It's not like they hide it from you.
All right, more questions, Dylan? Nothing yet, okay. I'll intentionally wait very patiently for anybody else's questions.
Rob, did you say this recording was gonna be available on the website?
I will, whatever I need to do to make it available, I will do it. Yes.
Somebody had asked earlier if it was gonna be posted somewhere.
I will work with our communications guy to see if I can get it on the website. If it's not, I will make sure that we have, each BSR has it, and then we can get it out to the people that were here today.
Rob, Tom Gallagher again, if I may.
Yeah.
Looking at this point scale for the employers, I'm just looking for ways around this hour thing. I can score a fair number of points on here. Is there any weight carried on that or can you ask that question? Is there any weight carried on that to help change the hours presentation?
So go ahead.
Well, I'm coming up with, without even getting into questions 3 and 4, I can score 7, 6, and 8. I'm already at 21 points. So I'm scoring fairly well, but I'm still stuck with that hours problem because we're a seasonal employer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can definitely ask that as part of the follow-up to that question as well. I'll see what they say, and then I can reiterate the fact that, you know what, it's a very and like you said earlier, Tom, you're not alone. There's a lot of construction companies. There's a lot of other seasonal companies, resorts in our area that are going to fall into this as well. But that do need that training for their incumbents and their new hires. I will do that. I will follow up with that to see how the points could be weighted.
All right, thank you.
I'm gonna find a pencil. I'm gonna write that down. I will forget that.
There is another question in the chat, Rob.
Okay.
It's from Sarah Thiessen. Says, I attended another webinar that mentioned that intro or overview training for Lean and Microsoft Office and basic safety overviews that are associated with the normal cost of doing business have not been eligible in the recent past. Can you speak to the Lean training specifically?
Yeah. So with our partners at MMTC, we've definitely have curriculums that are built that would qualify. The intro to Lean, like if it was a 1-day or a 4-hour training, those are not going to be eligible. But the larger, more in-depth Lean trainings are going to be. They've, very specifically, we have had those trainings be awarded year after year after year when our employers go to MMTC for that Lean training. So as long as it's not the introductory, I think we're okay.
Rob, I pulled up the process guide. I have the exact wording on that.
Oh, okay, go for it.
Under ineligible training definitions, it says introductory process improvement, such as basic Lean / intro to Lean or Lean overview. So those would not be eligible. So that's the exact wording.
No. Yeah, and like I said, for our area, the Lean practitioner training, the Lean, sorry, Betsy, I'm forgetting names of these things, but the trainings that have been developed in this area have all been eligible, and the overview is still available, but we wouldn't put it on the training plan.
Yeah, Rob, hi, it's Betsy, and thank you. We'd love to work with you, anyone that in regards to Lean. And yes, we have been very successful getting the Lean, where what we do is, because our training is so hands-on, that we do project work. So it is at a different level than introduction level. But for those that still need the basic tools of Lean, we do start all of the trainings with that. So it's a good pathway for everyone to be a part of. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy.
Could I mention just a couple things?
Absolutely, Evelyn.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Just a couple notes. Tomorrow we have a apprenticeship info session. So anyone on this call that is interested in learning more about registered apprenticeship and how it can be attached to the Going Pro Talent Fund, please feel free to email or reach out or put your contact information in the chat, and Marie can send you a link for that presentation. And also wanted to mention that the Going Pro Talent Fund dollars can also be braided with any state apprenticeship expansion grants. So if you are working with our team right now and you're wondering if you can receive both funding sources, yes, you can. And that includes just about any type of apprenticeship employer that we're working with. So if you have any questions on that, contact somebody from the apprenticeship team, either Marie, Jane, or Tina, and they can explain that process to you. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody typing last minute furious questions for us?
There's Tom typed in the chat. Another question on hours. Could an employer use average hours of all? I think he means employees.
Yeah. Average hours. That is another question that I will have to ask.
And that was a correct assumption. I am thinking that if we took our company average hours, that may help. Because we have a number of full-time year-round that do a substantial amount of overtime. But we also have a number of employees who just crossed the 1,000-hour mark.
Okay.
And most likely new employees would fall into that smaller hour mark.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I will definitely follow up with our contacts at Leo. Like I said, we're gonna have a phone call. That's gonna be a statewide phone call, so questions will be limited during that time, but I can also just call our contacts and ask these questions because they are popping up more and more. So it's good stuff. All right. So we started at 1, so we're at the hour-and-a-half mark. We can give you 30 minutes back. That's our present to you, yay. Or if there's more questions, we're here for a couple more minutes. Well, 30 more minutes. Oh, and Grace has offered that it says average hours of trainings, so that might be a good sign for us. So Melanie, right, Melanie? Very first step, if we've never ever done this before. So Promethean, if I have this correct, if that's Melanie, okay. Dylan, that is your company. So reaching out to Dylan Malama, and Dylan and I work very closely together right now. So you'll probably get both Dylan and I. And yeah, it is. Okay. So she's reached out to you, Dylan. So we'll just set a meeting with you guys. When it's your very first time, we'd love to just get, the fact finding. What are you looking for? How many people you want to get trained? What do you want to get them trained in? Who are your training vendors? All those very pertinent questions that we need to have answers for the application process. So just, Dylan and I will Dylan will reach back out and just set up a meeting. And that meeting could be as easy as going over it on the phone, or we could come and take a look. For Melanie, for you, I said, let's come on site because we have some Industry 4.0 stuff that we're doing with you guys as well. So that's some good stuff too. But yeah, in general, if you're looking to just break into this, contact somebody on that contact page and we'll get you to the right person. We cover geographic regions, so there's that. Our apprenticeship team seems to be spread all over the place. So whatever you guys need and however you guys need to be reached, or however you can reach us, we'll just start that process right there. So in addition to those things that I just mentioned, is there any other footwork that we can have done before we meet? So typically with an apprenticeship, or I'm sorry, with a Going Pro application, you're just going to want to be very intentional about who you're sending to training. Some of the pitfalls that some employers fall into are, oh my gosh, let me train everybody in everything. And those training plans, although they're allowed, they get very unwieldy very quickly when there's a million different parts to them. So we want to focus on the training that you're going to do within the next year. We want to be very intentional with, if you're putting new hires on there, how many new hires you have hired in the last couple of years. Because if you need 20 employees, but you've only hired 3 in the last 2 years, we want to be realistic about that. So it's just about identifying your training, identifying who's going to do that training. That's another pitfall that people fall into. Don't wait to talk to Betsy at MMTC. Their calendar fills up pretty quickly. And if you're intending to reach out to them because you put their training, you need lean training, right? And you put that on the application, but you haven't solidified the dates yet. Those dates get eaten up pretty quickly because Betsy does such a good job. They're very popular training destination. So make sure that we're all communicating with each other on that. The footwork is just deciding what you're going to need, being very rational and intentional about what you're going to be able to complete within a year. We don't like giving money back. We have been doing that this last couple of years, no fault of anybody, COVID, and then the hiring issues that we've been having, that everybody, there's no exceptions to that. Talent is scarce. And that's why this program is so important, to train the people that you have, but also try to get those new hires in there and get them trained up. So that would be the footwork that I do. Be intentional about what training you need, when you're going to get it, who's going to do it. I don't know if the team has anything else to add to that. Those of you that have done these before.
I would recommend maybe don't aim for the moon. Start kind of small with your first year. But that's what I've seen is employers that the first time they've done it, if they try to do it too much, it ends up getting out of hand. So
yeah, it's a fair statement. We've definitely given large awards back because it was too much. It was too much for the employer to do. So that being said, we're going to follow your lead on that. So if you want the moon and you're able to do it, we're along for that journey too.
Definitely.
Hey, Rob, it's Betsy. I just wanted to chime in regards to dates. One thing that we do that makes the application process easy is during that process, if you select the training, we even confirm the dates right then and there. We put them as tentative. Of course, then if you don't get the funding, well, we just release those dates. But that's something that we can do because then I think it also makes a stronger application. You have the dates and then we all know that. So we're not scrambling afterwards and trying to get everything done. So just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
That's another great point. Yeah. MMTC does do that. I remember. So if you're, in communication with them, they've already given you the dates. We'll put those dates or at least a window around those dates because you possibly are going to be doing other training that's either earlier or later. So you'll want to surround those training dates with the dates on the application. But knowing those application dates or those training dates is always very, very useful. Okay. How can you give too much if you have to submit receipts before? Okay, so Melanie, I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question. How can you give too much? Oh, okay. So when I was talking about giving money back, so through the application process, you're putting all the trainings that you want to be reimbursed for on the application. You do get awarded based on that training plan that you have developed. So if your training plan includes 2 classes for this amount of people and $20,000 is the reimbursement amount that you're awarded. But 10 of those people go away because they either have quit, moved on, didn't take the training for whatever reason. Maybe you weren't able to get them off site to do it. You're too busy. 10 people didn't take the training. So since they weren't able to take that training, you're only being reimbursed for half of it, basically. So that $10,000 that you did, and you can prove that you have the receipts, that when I say give back, I don't mean give back, I mean you don't get reimbursed for. Hopefully that ramble made sense.
When, from what I understand, when the approval happens, the money is allocated. It's not dispersed. It's just allocated. So, and then that's what the state doesn't like, is to take that allocation back.
Thank you. All right, good. All right, anything else? And if there are questions that pop in your mind after this phone call, feel free to contact us. You have our contact information. I'll put it back to that. And if you're already working with our apprenticeship team, that's another door that we would love to have you walk through, and let that apprenticeship specialist know what your question is. All right, Grace, with DOL and OJT training, how soon after the award can we submit for reimbursement for DOL and OJT training? So for the US DOL training, your 90-day retention starts either when that classroom training starts or when the OJT starts. So whenever they're on the job training. So basically you have the 90-day window that they're doing that program if it's a new hire. If it's an incumbent worker, when they get done with their classroom training portion and they have the certificate and you prove that you paid for it and that they've got it, that's when you can submit. So once the training is done and you have proof that it's done, that's when you can submit. And one thing that we did start this fiscal year, so FY22, were monthly meetings where we could check in. And it's worked great so far. We canceled, and it actually would have been today that we would have had another one. But due to this and several other things that we're doing, we canceled the check-in. But that's another 12 checkpoints that you can just come on, and I'll invite all the key contacts within the application system. All the awardees will get this invitation. And you can come on, and it is both of our teams, the apprenticeship team and the business services team, will answer any one of your questions. You can tell us that you're leaving, you're retiring next month, and you're already thinking about the beach. You just tell us who the next person is behind you so that we don't lose contact with you for the training, so the employer doesn't suffer for that. So anything that you guys can think of, we'll do that again next year. And it's worked out famously because there's been 2 or 3, we haven't been inundated with people, but we've got a really deep dive with those 2 or 3 that are on the phone call and answer a lot of good questions. And then we're obviously there for you any other time that you want to get a hold of us. So
another little thing that I didn't know if it was mentioned, Rob, I didn't hear it. They're kind of related to that. There's a need for two individuals that are listed on the contact. So a backup if the original one can't be contacted for whatever reason. It's a requirement, but it's pretty simple. You just have to enter 2 people's information. So just a backup if you can't edit the document for whatever reason.
yeah, in the WeBoom system, when you're filling out the employer information tab or section, they're going to ask for 2 people, and it is required that we have 2 people. So if you don't, for some reason, have 2 people, if you're a small enough business where like you're it, maybe you have a second email, maybe you could try putting in your name for both spots. I don't know if that's allowed, but we've run into that before where like somebody had to make up an email. It is required that we have 2. And that's just to cover the bases with communication. And Tom, you're welcome, and we'll see you at that apprenticeship meeting tomorrow. Any other last minutes? Everybody is very welcome. All right, well, with that, thank you, everybody. That last slide that's on our presentation just gives the state level information. That Leo email right there is one that we use as well. So if we have a question, we're asking it there. So feel free to use that. That website gives a lot of great information. That some of it you heard today, but there's more information on the website too. So thank you, everybody, for coming. And we will see you soon, I'm sure. Thanks, teams.